present, future, all in the room, they're calling my name.
Hello, everyone. Today we are very fortunate to have with us an esteemed guest, Alexa. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you. Happy to be here.
As we do here, we start at the beginning, the past. We'd love to hear a little bit more about the beginning of your journey in art as a musician and kind of what that process was like.
To me, the journey started so early on as a child, but so much of that was happening in my own inner world. And this took me years looking back to realize that I wasn't actually doing anything. I just felt like I was doing something. I just felt like I was living in that world. And I mean, I was living in that world. But I moved to LA when I was 18 to be a musician. And aside from doing karaoke in my dad's downstairs basement and singing in the car and having voice lessons, I guess I was in choir too. I didn't know anything about the music business. I didn't know what to do when I got to LA. I just pretty much showed up. Like, okay, I'm in LA. I guess I just wander around until somebody goes, you're going to be the next star. And ironically, I didn't know what to do because I had no plan and no idea what I was doing. And I went on one audition thinking, I guess I should get good at going on auditions because I have no idea what to do here. And I got that audition. And so that was my beginning into the music industry. It was a project through Universal to be a pop singer. And in that beginning, I didn't know the difference between being an artist yet and just somebody singing a song. I felt it a little bit, but I didn't know yet how to get that across. So I thought, and I mean, I grew up in the millennial era with pop stars being pretty much all you saw was like people who were ultra famous. So I just associated being a musician with you have to be very famous. You don't hear about the session musician making a living. You don't hear about really anybody but the people in magazines on a magazine stand. We didn't have there were some YouTube people, but it wasn't like how it is now where you can build a really sizable following and still the people around you in your near vicinity don't even know who you are. You know what I mean? So I thought, okay, well, I just have to get famous as a singer, and then later on, I'll be able to do what I really want. So I thought, I'll be really willing just to do whatever people want me to do, even if it's not what I really want, because I'll get my foot in the door. And then later on, once I have power and money and like resources, then I will pivot. Then I'll find my meaning. Then I'll find what it is that I want. I'll edit it from there. That was my thought process. And I can see now looking back, this is interesting because I was just thinking about this week. I felt like at the time, being the person who I was such a problem. Being sensitive, being shy. I felt like it was always something I had to like push through. And I thought it was blocking me from succeeding because I would go out with friends in Hollywood and be like, this is so weird. This is disgusting. I don't want to talk to this producer. Like, it felt weird. It felt wrong. I was not drinking the Kool-Aid and I was trying, but I was like, I can't. And I always thought of that as like, why can't I make this work for me? Everyone around me is making it work for me. I look like I could make it work for me, but I'm so weird. I just can't get behind it. And looking back on that now, those things that I thought that held me back, which maybe they did in some ways, like it was just harder for me to get myself to go to auditions and stuff. It also saved me. I mean, I didn't end up like how some of these people who get taken advantage of because they want something so badly that they're willing to do anything for it. And now I see those things like that sensitivity as really an instinct that saved me from being taken advantage of. And I thought it made me weird, but now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, it was actually just wisdom. And I always thought it was a problem. I always thought it was something wrong with me. So I guess it was a good thing, you know, because I had to learn that the hard way. Like getting something for the wrong reasons is never going to feel right. It's never going to stick. And you're just going to keep pushing the bar.
There's a lot of really kind of nuggets in the things you were saying, both in a lot of times kind of our identity as a creative or as a builder is something that isn't just the moment that you start building or you start kind of doing something. It is in laying the blueprints, whether it's the mentality you're building or the preparation or different hobbies you pick up along the way. And the other thing which I think is so powerful is this notion of success, this notion of like, if I could just get out of my own way and just kind of go with the program, everything will be good. And I can relate to my own way. I've definitely been in certain situations in tech where if I just kind of fit the narrative a little bit better, I would have kind of had a different level of kind of perceived success in my career. But I think there's something to be said for understanding of like, what do you want to be doing and not kind of making your own hoops to get through and like redefining success. Like I mean, being out here, like you meet like studio musicians all the time who've like worked with a lot of kind of like great musicians and maybe don't have all the downside that they have to deal with kind of in terms of some of that fame and some of those challenges, but have been able to have very fulfilling artistic careers. It's very, very powerful and I appreciate you sharing that. If we can touch a little bit kind of, if you'd like to talk a little bit about kind of the evolution kind of your musical sound kind of from the beginning and kind of into some of the more recent projects, we can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. The project I had mentioned wasn't my music. I wasn't writing it, and I was just performing it, and I was under contract, so I didn't have any say in anything. And I eventually snapped and I was like, I got to get out of this. I don't want to do this anymore, and basically just quit. And I was a little traumatized by the experience that I had in LA so early on. I mean, I didn't get too into the specifics of that, but it was just so grueling and so controlling and so cruel that I had that, like I was mentioning too, like, I want this so bad, but also, what the fuck is this? Sorry, I swore. And I kind of tried to block it out of my mind, and I moved. I left LA. I went to Portland. I lived there for 3 years, and later on I did write a book about that time, but I tried just to forget all about music during that time. I didn't ever tell anybody that I had been in LA as a musician. I didn't talk about it. I almost forgot in a way, but it haunted me. And I do believe, like, in a way, that dream of mine, that like pull towards something that had meaning to me, because that was the difference between what I was doing in that project and what I didn't realize was, I believe, what makes somebody an artist. And I believe, and if everybody is an artist, if you feel like something has meaning to you and you're drawn towards it and you want to participate with it in a certain way, I think that you're creating something with that, and that's like art in whatever form. And now I realize I need meaning behind something. I can't just do something because somebody says so. even if there is a formula to follow. I wish there was, like, you work in tech, like I want a clear formula. Like, just give me the formula. I will follow it. But you have to tell me why. You have to tell me what it means, you know, or where it's going, or just something. Like, I need like some meaning behind it. And that pull never really went away, even if I didn't know why it was there fully. And I ended up moving back to LA. And it did, in a way, keep me going through some tough times, because I still had this thought that I don't think I gave it my all. I don't think I tried as hard as I could. I want to try in a different way, because like I have nothing to lose right now. It's in like a low point in my life. And what that gave me was a voice, things to say. I wasn't just a little girl anymore at 18 wanting to be a pop star. I had seen some stuff, you know, and I had, when I moved back to LA, I didn't mean to, but I just started writing and I just didn't stop. It was my first experience ever trying to write lyrics or anything like that. And I didn't know how to write music, but I could make up the melodies in my head. And so I bought a guitar. I started teaching myself how to play. And I started trying to put a band together and playing open mics and stuff like very low key. And I have really bad stage fright. And so every time it was really a weird, like, why is that my biggest fear and like the only thing I want to do? Maybe that's not on accident. But eventually I did start a band that stuck. And it took a while to get there. And like, you know what, I say it took a while, but I think that was like probably some layers of brainwashing of like, oh, you're supposed to be this age and doing this at this time and all of that. But by then I was playing rock and roll, like hard rock and roll. It was not, I mean, it was like somewhat commercial, I guess, just because it was catchy, but it was completely different. I looked different. I was always a little bit edgy, because I've always just been kind of the person who will say that thing you're not supposed to say. But now it was like I had created a persona, I guess you could say, that really worked for that. And I didn't get to be in that band for as long as I thought that I would because of COVID. But we broke up after that. And I've been in other projects since then, just putting out solo stuff. But I did pivot to going to writing, just writing that novel, Breakfast at Sassy's. And I would say that it was hard to separate, oh, am I a musician or am I a writer? Like, why do I have to keep thinking of myself with these different hats? Can it all just be one big thing? But the world wants you to be marketable and niche and easy to package and sell. And I kind of maybe felt slowed down by that, of kind of like, am I this now? And having a bit of an identity crisis, but not during the creative process, because I always just sat down and did what I wanted to do. But then later on, I didn't know what to do with it, if that makes sense.
It's like, how do I brand myself? Like, in the moment you have kind of the idea, kind of you connect with kind of whatever kind of place where creativity comes from, which I'm sure is a whole philosophical discussion in itself. But it's like, how do I brand myself? How do I package? How do I give people something, a handle to hold on to define me? And I'll say, like, I think one thing you said earlier, which resonated, of like, music's not just kind of about just saying words or singing a song. It's about meaning. And I think like you've been able to convey meaning in song, or kind of in a written format, kind of in your book, in your Substack, kind of in those different mediums. And I think like even with the book, like I I didn't read. I actually listened to the audiobook version of the book, and like the way you pay attention to detail there, and the way you kind of just like the layers that you add there, kind of in terms of creativity, like make it such a resonant experience. Um, and I think just in general, like the stuff kind of you've spoken about in your podcast about kind of not kind of defining yourself. I think I find this it's a really amazing kind of duality of sorts. On the one hand, we need a kind of a certain structure or kind of like a vessel to express our creativity, but at the same time, like that vessel can be kind of what kind of boxes us in. I feel like it's almost like to use this to kind of, I'll use a lazy example. Like you can get like a recording deal can be a tool to kind of to share your messaging, but that same recording deal can be the tool that kind of boxes you in and stifles your creativity. And like there's, I feel like that's something that applies in a lot of life. There's that kind of that push and pull dynamic of structure, and I call it creative destruction.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for me, what I had to come to terms with was not to put the cart before the horse. And I think a lot of people, that works for them. You pick the identity, create the thing, like visualize what you want, and then create it. I'm the opposite of that. I just want to have that pull, like I mentioned, and then follow what feels right, see what comes out of it, and then step back and be like, oh, I see what it is, and start to put it together. And that takes longer, and it's confusing and messy and annoying, to be honest, because it keeps evolving. But that way you can keep evolving with it forever, as opposed to picking one thing and going, everything has to fit into this forever.
I think it's to quote one of, you did a great podcast episode on bottoms up thinking, which is I think kind of elaborates on this, but it's also giving yourself the time to discover and not kind of like, do I have all the information? Am I just kind of basing on other people's assumptions, other people's experience? Or do I have enough kind of data to make an informed decision? Um, to take this and kind of to pivot a little bit and segue, you've been taking a lot of the kind of this knowledge you learned of your own creative process, and you've been building a community and kind of sharing a lot of these things. I would love to hear a little bit more about what is a bad creative and kind of what is that community and kind of some of the services that you offer kind of within that context.
Sure. Yeah. The Bad Creatives. I started that. It's been an idea that I had seen far, far away in the distance for a few years, for years, really. But I wasn't sure what it was yet. And I saw a pattern among so many people, not just the obvious artist or the obvious creative type, but like genuinely from all people that if I got to talk to them long enough, I saw a pattern of people doing what they do in their day to day, but then also having something that meant so much to them that kind of got pushed to the side a lot. And it was usually their like a creative project or even just something they like doing that maybe wouldn't seem like the most creative thing, but it mattered to them. And that just to get by in our day-to-day lives was the thing that didn't fit. And I thought that's so messed up, that like the thing that lights you up and makes you feel amazing is the thing you don't have any space for, isn't life supposed to feel like it's your life? And I think what I saw was people were, well, what's the point if I can't go X amount with it, if I can't be successful with it, if I can't do it right? And it was taking all the enjoyment out of the process of even doing it, even blocking them from showing up for it. Consistency was a huge thing. People like couldn't be consistent and we're feeling so much shame around that. and or people having ideas, and we would be talking about their ideas, and then they just never did it. And I always wondered, that's okay. I mean, I have a million ideas. I couldn't possibly do all of them, but I was like, why is it that people get these ideas and they're like lighting up about it and then they don't do it? And it came down to like this pattern of they didn't know how to fit it into their life. They had fears, they had blocks, they had whatever. And I thought, why has that never been? I've always been able to do the thing. I couldn't tell you how to become a New York Times bestselling author because that's not really what motivates me, but I can tell you how to show up for something that you want to do. And that was how it was born. Is I really wanted to help people show up for what it was that they really wanted to do for themselves, not for the outcome. And that's a little bit harder to sell because people want to know, how do I get 100,000 followers in 30 days? They want, like we were talking about earlier, they want that. What were we saying? It was a recipe. We were saying it was they want the
structure. They want like pass go, collect $200 and you'll get the output. I mean, I have like for me similar, like whenever people hear I work in tech, they're like, so what are the steps that I should follow to get like a job at Google? And similarly for me, it's like, I don't know how I kind of entirely got there. I kind of like followed some of my passions and I got lucky that it aligned. But yeah, people like it's, you can make a great business selling like, this is my formula. This is how you get this outcome, or get these customers, or get 10 brand partnerships in 30 days. But
it sells?
What?
Selling people stuff. That sells. Because one of the biggest niches on YouTube is how to grow your YouTube channel.
It's selling an identity, though. It's
well,
a piece
they
of,
look like they know what they're talking about because everybody wants to know how to grow their YouTube channel. You know what I mean? And I started being like, wait a minute. They don't know how to help me grow the kind of channel I want to grow. They only know, and so I was like, okay, so we're going slow and steady wins the race here. And not that I'm trying to win a race. I'm trying to build something that felt meaningful to me, that was sustainable. Because that was the other piece of it, is like we're all trying to shove so much into our days. And I think burnout is like a huge thing for like so many different people for so many different reasons, especially right now. We don't need to get into all that. But how can we build a life that feels sustainable? Because at what point do you step back and you go, whose life am I living? And I think sometimes it's really hard to look at that and to ask that, because I thought my life was really hard because I was thinking, why do I always have to have so much meaning? Why can't I just be normal? Why can't I just work in tech? Like, why didn't I just get a normal degree and follow this structure and the steps? Because now my life feels, but then I see somebody else who has those things and they don't have what I have, And so I thought, okay, well, how can we make this more sustainable? How can we make this more something where it really feels like this is mine? This is my life. I chose this, not this is like the best I can get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's doing work and creating something, not just in your art, but also in kind of creating a business or creating a structure where it's an extension of who you are. And like, yes, we show up differently than we do in business than we do in our own lives, but you're facing a lot less friction when you're kind of following. This is something that the former head of Google X, who might still be current, I haven't checked, speaks about, like, how do you create the path of least resistance in life and business and teams? And I think there's like, I definitely like resonate with the idea of doing things on your own kind of terms, even if the kind of the timeline or the results don't necessarily kind of look externally impressive, but they matter to you. Like, you have even the deal with like startups. There's a community called like indie hackers, where like their goal isn't to like make a big exit. Their goal is like, can I make 200K a year of my own business? And like, that is the goal. And like, it's a worthy goal. We don't always have to like have these like highs and lows of like astronomical success, or like, it's really kind of, what do you want your life to look like? And something which like I think a lot about and written a little bit about is like how that personal and professional intertwine of like, who are you actually and what do you actually want, not what you're primed to want. And in a way, I feel lucky that I had opportunities at these big tech companies because it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be. Like, it's great, a lot of stability, and I worked with a lot of talented people and really cool projects. But as a teenager, I sold myself this idea of what that would look like. Oh, if I work in tech, like I'm gonna be surrounded by like smart people. We're gonna be like changing the world. I mean, besides for how a lot of that played out over the years, as people know, but my personal experience didn't necessarily kind of match that. But it was an opportunity. Like, so what now? That peak isn't it. What do I actually want to pursue? But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think you share a lot of great information of, I think in a way, like there's building new structures, but sometimes a lot of the work is like, how do we take down the old scaffolding? Have we been primed to see things a certain way, or what creativity looks like? I mean, even from like, it's like if I'm like creating music or creating a project, like, can I post it on Etsy? Can I monetize it? Like, can I get a creator partnership? Or it's like, how about you just express yourself for the sake of expressing, and like take a break from like, stop reading the ebooks, stop trying to find the 10 steps, but like find a way to truly express who you are.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point that you bring up, because that monetizing piece, and that, so, you did create something. So the next step would be to put that out into the world and to offer that. And I do think it is like, you didn't really get to give yourself that feeling of completion if you don't do that step. And a lot of really creative people, artistic people, sensitive people, like however they want to, whatever they want to call it, they struggle with that step because it feels so unnatural. It's like, oh, I just want to be lost in the creative process. I don't want to market myself. I don't want to post on TikTok, and making it so it doesn't fit into that world anymore. And what I realized, and this might just be how I am personally, but I didn't think that it had to be separate anymore. I thought that everything's an experiment. And for me, putting myself out there as like, oh, I can mentor you, I can coach you, I can help you with this somatic, like coaching, breath work, like this whole new world. It almost felt like a humiliation ritual all over again, because it's like, okay, now Alexa's doing this. And to me, I don't see where one ended and the next began, because it felt like a natural evolution. And for me to not have shared that at every step of the way and let people into that, it almost would have felt like I never finished something. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to. Of course, you can have something be just for you. But when I don't by any means feel like I need to put every song I've ever written out into the world. But giving yourself that experience of being seen, of being received, and of even being rejected and not being liked, but continually choosing to show up for it anyway, is, in a way, I guess it's like business. And that's why so many people who would think they were just creatives like icky, but that's how you grow as an artist as well. Because it like made me go through this whole identity thing of like, well, what are they rejecting? Like, do they, like, what part of me, because we're attaching ourselves with something that they don't like, because you put so much into it and you try so hard. And then if somebody doesn't like that, or it's not received well, or you're putting yourself out there in a new way, and it's so vulnerable, it's excruciating. And to be able to do that anyway, and to allow other people to have their experience of that anyway, and to keep showing up for that, it's not that I don't know that it ever gets easy, but I do think it makes you kind of go almost full circle into what are we taking all of this so seriously for? Instead of taking it even more seriously and being like, I have to succeed and all that. It's like, well, who cares if I fail? And I think people would maybe almost argue that that's like a bad way of looking at it. But I just stopped seeing that one was different than the other.
No, I think when we talk about structures, there's structures on both sides. There's a dogmatism with creatives as well, as kind of like the commercial aspect, like is kind of a dirty word, or kind of like it dilutes the purity. But I think to your point, like it's experimentation, it's learning new tools. Like I wrote a digital ebook and haven't had many sales to date, but the goal was never about selling it. It was about, I wrote an article. This is how you kind of publish a digital product, and learning it. How do I typeset it? How do I create something? How do I kind of give myself a timeline and kind of like, this is the time you have to write this book and put it out there, like experimenting with promoting it. And I saw it as a creative endeavor in itself. I just kind of created kind of promotional kind of assets for it that I probably wouldn't have made otherwise. So like it's all kind of it, as you see it, as a circle of experimentation and art in itself, and not as like, this is who I am, and then like, oh, I have to do this thing in order to build something else. You're not living in multiple worlds. You're something that is an extension of you, and like that is definitely like a true art of creativity. And there's so much, like marketing definitely gets a very, very bad rap, but there's a lot of creativity there, a lot of opportunity to creating a brand is like creating like a work of art. And it's something that I've had some like with this podcast. Like it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of kind of creative juice in there for sure.
Yeah, it's really cool to get to create a world and to invite people into it. And I think that that's, I'm on your podcast right now. I'm getting to have this experience. That's really cool, for me. And I wouldn't get to do that if you didn't invite me, and then I think you found me from TikTok, maybe. Was it?
Scrolling on Instagram, and I was
Instagram?
like, oh, yeah. And like this podcast clip, this sounds interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So from putting that work out into the world, like throwing something into the abyss, we make connections. And what you were talking about, the digital workbook you were selling, is that what it was? A digital PD, yeah.
It's a guide on how to find your next role. And it's more like, it's not even like a formula. It's more like, here's 20 things that helped me and like that I've learned along the way, essentially.
But you never know at what point in your life when you're going to want to do that again, and you already have the formula now. And I think that's where the creativity and the formula meet. You have to kind of trailblaze and be bad at stuff and just keep going and mess up and create that first one that's not very good. And I'm not saying yours isn't good. Mine first things weren't good, but and just keep going. And then you look backwards and you're like, oh, I have all this experience and I do have a formula now. And I didn't have that in the beginning, but you make that through trial and error. And even looking back on my earlier years as a musician and what I learned from that, it absolutely helps me in my life now. That's why I said I don't feel like I think it just keeps evolving, and I don't really feel like it's different. It's not, or I don't feel like it's okay, that book is over and done, and it doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing now. So it absolutely does. And it's so interesting too, like to think about technology and how, for me, I mean, this is like a hot debated topic right now, but with AI and everything, I know people really hate it and people going back and forth about it. But I have opinions on both sides. I'm not taking a side at all, but I do know that there have been certain crossroads of technology and art that have been amazing, really cool, have completely changed the game in a way that felt really helpful to me as like an independent artist who does everything themselves. And I'm not trying to say that there isn't like another side to it at all, but for me, how we do something, how we use something, how we engage with it decides if that's something that's just a formula, just checking something off a list, or if that's a creative, artistic expression of self. So when people, I'm sorry if this is like segueing a little bit too far, but when people say, you know, AI is taking your job, no, people are taking your job. People replace you with AI. A person decided that. AI didn't say, yo, I'd really love these jobs, And I think that should be talked about more, because AI is not replacing jobs. People are replacing people with AI. You know what I mean? And if it would be cool if we could use technology and like in these ways, like for me, where I found it being so amazing. Like, I'm like, wait, I don't understand. Why are we using it for these stupid reasons? Why don't we use it for all these cool reasons? We could be like solving a global warming with this, Why are we wasting it? It's just, yeah. I don't know what, I probably should have asked what area of tech you work in before going on that tangent, but here we are.
No, it's completely fine. I've had the opportunity to see it in kind of different perspectives, and have worked at some of these major companies, and I think there's nuance isn't always the easiest path to take, but I definitely agree. Like I maintain a somewhat kind of cynical and practical view of kind of seeing some of the benefits and seeing some of the downsides. But yeah, I think definitely I think like the benefit you mentioned about putting yourself in a new space, learning new things, I think that kind of builds a pattern. And to your point as well, like I think one of the former PayPal executives kind of said pretty openly in an interview, is like, don't blame AI. You messed up on your hiring practices, and now you're kind of using AI as a shield, which I think even that take is a little bit like cynical. Like there's a lot to be done, and I don't think any of these companies are hurting to the point where they have to, because there's impacts and layoffs, and that's a whole other tangent which I won't go into over here. But it's a very real point. It's not Gemini didn't wake up, or ChatGPT didn't wake up and said like fire 1,000 people. It's a very much a financial calculation, and people making those decisions. Looking at the future. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I guess I was like, oh, right. I had a point of that tangent. It was, we still have to be the director, right? We have to prompt something. And so I think that that's when you engage with whatever it is in your life, whatever area you're in any career path, you still have to be the one that engages and chooses the path you want to go. And based on those choices that you make, that dictates what you have to work with and where you're going to go and how it's going to look. And I don't know at what point in that process people stop feeling like they have a choice anymore. And I think that that's where, when you think of yourself as an artist and you can be forever evolving, you don't, it's a little bit easier to be flexible and whimsical and go all over the place. And you can see people go too far the other way and get stuck in that and like can never get anything done, and they can't commit, and they can't create any sort of formula because they don't want to be stuck in a mold. But then I think sometimes with people who have like good jobs, good careers, 9 to 5, they don't, what I have noticed is that they have, not always, but that thing I was talking about in the beginning, where like some things do fall to the wayside, and they're like, well, that's just not a part of my life anymore. It's just not. And so that's where I kind of thought, you know what, it doesn't have to be that you want to be in like a expert piano player. It doesn't have to be like art per se, but it's your life. You can create the life you want. You can show up to the life you want. And you have all these tools now at your disposal to do that. I mean, anybody can just look how do I do blank, and you can find out how to do that. And so I felt like a shame to me to see so many people, whether they considered themselves an art, it started with artists, and then it kind of evolved to just being like, no, I think this is just anybody. Like your life should really feel like yours. And even if that's like something like small, where you're just like creating more intentional time in your day to make it feel like it's yours instead of like you're just showing up for all of these demands constantly. Or maybe it's something really big. Like maybe you're like, I was afraid to look at this because I'm realizing like, I don't even want this life, like that would be like the really far end. But I wanted it to create something where people could find a way to make their life feel like a work of art. And I know that sounds really poetic, but I meant how many times do you meet somebody who's so grumpy, or you hear like people on their deathbed and they look back and they're just like, what was I doing? Whose life are you living?
Yeah, it's important to realize the agency we have and not needing to wait for permission to embrace, and not like embracing your passions, or not like you don't need to. I think like kind of tying it back to some of the stuff we were talking in the beginning of like, yes, it is amazing. Sometimes we'll be discovered. Sometimes we'll have opportunities. I've had mixtures of moments of my career where it's kind of me finding opportunities, and sometimes opportunities found me. But we don't need to wait for those moments. We can kind of create many moments. And with AI and with a lot of the tools out there, you can do these things yourself. If you want to like make a short film, connect with your friends, do something. It doesn't have to be top-notch quality. Like, I forgot who said this, but like, they're saying when you make art, when you start out, it's not going to be great. And because of your taste, you're going to be like, you're going to recoil from like your piece of art. But that's how you start. And eventually over time, your craft catches up to your taste. And it's a really, really kind of power. And like on both ends, like we can get stuck in ruts, either kind of in kind of pushing against kind of structure and system. We can get stuck in a rut that way, or we can kind of like overclock or kind of over move to the side of safety and not really kind of allow ourselves kind of an expression. And it is really kind of important, the work that you're doing, the knowledge that you're sharing, to look at it through a future lens. Kind of in the podcast name, we also have the future component. What would be really fulfilling for you to see bad creatives grow into, or the community you can build around that? Like what would that look like in terms of like really kind of building that? And I mean, not to like think about like tech terms, like how would you scale it, but more like what would kind of the full embodiment of that vision look like?
I would like to see it evolve from just being a community where some people feel like, wow, I feel seen, or I found this person who's talking about something that I didn't even know I felt until I heard it out loud. And then it gives them language behind it, to being more of a movement that I'd like more people to be talking about this, to be almost like, how the pendulum swings, right? I think it's pretty safe to say we've been swinging in one way for a while. And I would love for there to be just this like rebellious reclamation, I can't say that word, of so many people to reconnect with themselves, with people, with redefining these things that were completely blown out of proportion and exploited in a patriarchal society and like late stage capitalism. I mean, I would love for us to become like a little bit less brainwashed, or maybe like a lot less brainwashed. So what I'm talking about in the bad creatives sometimes I think can be daunting for people, because they're like, how could I even begin? Like, because that thing I said before where it's like, how do you admit one thing isn't right? Because then it starts to show you all this other stuff that isn't right. And it can feel really overwhelming. But if we changed the goal, I don't like know anything about sports, but like the end to, instead of being like, oh, we're trying to reach success, we're trying to reach this certain amount of money and like all of these monetary goals that we're what we thought was life was all about, and then we're finding when you get there you don't feel really anything and it just keeps moving. If we could just like kind of put that like somewhere else for maybe like the next couple of centuries or something, and then just like refocus back on what makes life worth living, and creating and connecting and talking about what really matters and who we really are, and not in like a way where, oh, let's all become really separate because we're talking about, I think sometimes there can be a bit of a cliche of like, oh, the girl finds out she's autistic and that makes that her entire identity. And that's definitely part of the process where you have to get really annoying about the new thing you found out about for a while. But to take all of this information and go, what does this all mean? We're finding out a lot of more information than we had before. And a lot of people are having a really hard time with the way the world is. And the way, maybe I could just speak for this country. I don't know if I could speak for the world. Maybe I can't speak for this country either. I'll speak for myself. I've seen enough of a pattern of saying, I would love to see the bad creatives grow into something where it was like a movement and more people could get on board with that. And I want to hear what they could bring to that table. And I want to grow and connect with other people who maybe have missing pieces that I don't have yet. So when I don't have a perfect vision for that yet, I don't really need one because I don't do things like that. I just keep moving in the direction that feels like it wants to be fed. And I try to make sure that I'm not feeding the parts of me that are just insatiably hungry for all the wrong reasons, and make sure I'm feeding the part of me that's like, yeah, this feels good. This feels right. And I don't know that usually all the time until I am directly connecting with another person and having that collaboration and that conversation where something lights up in me and then the pieces come together and something clicks. Because I kind of feel like inside me, it's just like a big, huge mess of ideas flying around, rapid fire. And then when I talk to somebody and they talk about what they're going through or what's they're struggling with, it organizes and becomes very clear. And so I can only imagine, starting to collaborate with more and more people that we could build something really cool. And I'm excited to see what that would be because I don't even know yet.
For me, like hearing that, I think it's like it's the same idea. It's that connection, it's the impact, but like how can that impact be magnified? How can the idea in the best way kind of spread beyond just you, or it's not just you kind of having those kind of conversations or kind of connecting those dots, but you kind of in turn connect to other people, and it kind of starts to become a ripple effect. Um, and I want to kind of echo the point you made and kind of like underline it in like red ink of like it's not always about like knowing the details or having that kind of vision up front. It's knowing kind of what your North Star is and kind of what's important to you and what's fulfilling for you. And being able to, there's so much value in being able to connect with other people, being like, oh, I know a little bit more kind of about what their world, what they're working on. And this is how kind of it connects into what I've been learning. I think sometimes like it's the idea of like you box yourself in with a vision. But when you kind of like have certain ideas and certain kind of ground pieces for how you would like to move and how you would like to build things, and then you take that together with being kind of open to learning new information, having new experiences, that allows you to kind of to see the world kind of in a new way and change things, because you can't like it's the quote of like insanity is doing the same thing and expecting like different results. Like the only way to really change a status quo or change how we do things is having kind of the stomach to look at things differently and to not just kind of rely on kind of the process that everyone's been following and giving them the same miserable results.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's if until we have enough people to look to, I think to give that, oh, right, that's that's the thing I've been, because sometimes you don't know what it is that you're feeling. You don't until you hear it out loud and you're like, oh my God, yeah, I resonate with that. And I want to help people find that connection with their truth, again, whatever their truth is, so that they can move toward that. And so we're not just questioning ourselves and kind of running in circles. And it's almost like I want to help people, like help the world become more human again. Because I think we're born with this like innate ability to know what's right for us. And then slowly along the way, we get told, no, that's not true. That's not right. It looks like this. And we get molded into something else. And to be a creative may have been what helped me to be willing to be messy and kind of look at that in a million different ways and pave a path for myself that was random and different and maybe more risky. But it's in these times throughout history when things collapse, who is there? It's often those weird artist people, those weird sensitive people who they wouldn't have been able to dominate a country or help people from war, but now it's like we have to rebuild again from a new place. We need beauty, we need love, we need art, we need something that moves us, we need to feel alive again, we need something worth living for again. And I was looking at like throughout history, there's always been like a huge revolution after a collapse. And a lot of that was artists, So I think, again, you don't have to be a person who like identifies as an artist, but I think there's just something about we all resonate. Well, so many people resonate with art specifically, even though we don't often pay artists very well. We're surrounded by art, And I think it would be cool to see on the other side of this is I'm maybe optimist. I'm like, I can get a little negative, but I still have that like optimistic heart that people are innately good and they want to be happy, and that there's definitely like a lot of greed and exploitation out there that I think is like a sickness, but I still think that like the average person, we want to be happy and connect with each other. And if you're given that opportunity versus an opportunity to like screw somebody over just so that you can get what you want, you might make the mistake of choosing that a couple of times, but eventually you're going to be like, okay, that doesn't feel good. I'm going to go the other way, And I feel like a lot of us have like already learned that lesson enough, It's like we're seeing how far the pendulum went the wrong way. And I think we're like ready for that revolution.
No, it's an extremely like powerful thing, kind of just like the power of being able to explore these ideas and kind of make those decisions. And the idea of, and I think this kind of both in a historical cycle and on a personal level, when you have a view of life and success, a very binary, pass or fail, success or not, you hit a lot of these kind of moments of failure, as it were, or moments of like, I didn't succeed. But if you change that to an idea of it's a creative process, and part of the creative process is creative, and then you destroy things and you start over from scratch. But it doesn't mean it was a failure. It's a cycle. It's a life cycle. It's like the half life of a cell, and kind of just the kind of that creative continued process. And the same thing that you have civilizations, and some civilizations brought us wonderful ideas and they kind of cycle through. And just because they didn't last doesn't mean they were a failure, but that's the nature of things. And then we rebuild off those ruins. We took some of their ideas, didn't take all of them. And that's, you build. And to talk about music is something that I like talking about, the idea of like remix culture, of like taking music or taking ideas, or on technology is taking code and forking a repo would be the tech term, but to kind of to remix something. And that's how you build a lot of really just incredible things. This is amazing. This is like you're doing a lot of really great work, and I'm really happy to kind of have you on the show, and so people can learn a little bit more about what you're doing and really kind of start to kind of, in a small way, kind of edge some of that kind of effect of kind of sharing this kind of style of thinking. But really grateful for you joining us and coming on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I think you are doing really great stuff as well. And you're still finding plenty of time to write and, express your creativity. And that's really inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Past, present, future, I'm done being patient. Every side of wall meets in this basement. I was running in a circle, now I'm drawing a frontier. Past, present, future, I choose my career.